Like, what does it do differently than, say, any of the like 16 personalities or the strengths finders or the any of those types of Myers-Briggs tools?
Yeah. Great question. I'm so glad you're asking this, Colin, because I love to geek out on OMG. So my company started out as a recruiting company. All right. When we started, and over the years that I've been in the industry, we mostly went out and I hired salespeople. And so now what we do is we go out and we teach companies the same process. And a huge part of the process is this assessment tool. And so to answer your question, the top two things that I would tell you it's different from most assessment tools, besides the fact that it's self-specific and it is predictive, is that one is going to filter out people for you, right? Coming from a sales recruiting perspective, right? I am a huge, say testament to how many people come through the pipeline. All right. I have hired, I think the biggest volume that we ever had in our company over the last 3 years. We had something like 16 people that we had to hire in a short amount of time. And to hire 16 people in a short amount of time means that you are building a huge pipeline, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this huge pipeline, what do I do with them, right? Do I just filter through resumes? And that's the other thing is resumes, how much in the resume is actually true? The first thing that we do is we'll put everyone through the assessment and we let the assessment do the filtering for us. So one of the things the assessment does really great that no other assessment does out there, especially with it being self-specific, is it will actually tell you, Colin, we recommend you to have a conversation with this person. We do not recommend you to have a conversation with this person based on their skill sets, based on their motivation levels, based on their level of desire to be in sales. And so take a pool of 500 people that you may have in your pipeline, and the assessment itself might be able to filter out 400 of them, which means I only have 100 people to talk to, right? So the fact that it does that, it's extremely powerful, especially since it is predictive, right? The other thing that the assessment does really well that a lot of assessments don't is it talks about sales DNA, all right? So back when I was a sales trainer, right, I worked for a sales training company for a long time, and we strictly did sales training, sales leadership training. And typically when we talk to CEOs, they would say, teach my people how to close more business, teach them how to knock on doors, teach them how to qualify, give them the skills, right? And that's exactly what we would do. We would go around, do a boot camp, do a 12-week program, do a 6-week program, whatever it was to teach people the skills. And what I found was that, say, out of a group of 10 salespeople, 1 or 2 were going to get better, right? And the other did it at that, right? Sometimes none of them got better. And that's terrible, right? Because you as the owner, you have made the investment, not only monetarily, but you put a lot of resources, you put a lot of time into making a salesperson be more effective. But the reality is you were focused on the wrong things, right? So you may be giving people the right skills, but are they even the right people to give those skills to, right? Do they have the desire to be in sales? We find that a lot of salespeople, they like the idea of being sales, but they really don't, right? There's a certain level of commitment and motivation that you need to have in order for you to be a successful salesperson. We found that a lot of salespeople didn't have that. And then most importantly, we also found that although we were teaching people all these skills, we found that they had a lot of internal weaknesses that would stop them from executing on those skills, right? So as an example of that, all right, could be, and we would get this all the time, is teach my people how to close more business. Great. Let's do a 2-day boot camp on how to qualify, how to kick the conversation off, how to ask the right questions, when to close, what questions to ask, yada, 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 right? Go through the same process. By the time that training session was over, they now have the skills. And then later, a week goes by, 2 weeks go by, and they still haven't executed. And so the question becomes, why? Why hasn't this person executed when I just took you to training, right? I just sent you off to training and you know what to do. And the salesperson may be able to tell you frontwards and backwards what are the things they need to be doing, yet they still won't do it. And so the question becomes, why? Why are they not doing it? And the reason for that is we all, right, myself, yourselves, and everybody else out there, we all have internal weaknesses that stops us from executing on the things. So going back to the example, say that I'm going out there and I'm teaching you how to close business and you have the skills, but say that internally you have a high need for approval. All right. High need for approval, the way that we define it is that high need to be liked, and in severe cases, loved. And people with a need for approval, they're great at making friends. They're great at building rapport. They're great at getting in the door. But what's the thing that you think they're not going to be doing? They're not going to be closing business, right? Because closing business requires a level of questions that you need to ask. Sometimes they need to be hard questions. Sometimes they need to be more in-depth questions. And not only that, closing requires you to ask for a close. And so if I have a high need for approval and I want people to like me, what's the last thing I'm going to be doing is closing, because I don't want to seem across as pushy. I don't want to take you to a place where you may not necessarily want to go. I may not want to ask you a question that I have to ask, but I'm afraid that it's going to upset you. So although I know that I have to close and I may have the skills, the fact that I have that need to be liked is what's going to stop me from actually going for the close.